When the holidays start to feel a bit repetitive, reach for a Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry and put your twist on tradition. A bold cranberry and winter spice flavor fusion, Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry is a refreshing way to shake things up this sipping season. And only for a limited time. Sprite. Obey your thirst.
Game's over. Time to check my fantasy scores.
You using a VPN?
Why?
Because using public Wi-Fi without a VPN is like leaving your wallet open on the table.
Oh. Time to up my defense.
McAfee Secure VPN keeps your personal information private and is included in all McAfee plans starting at just $39.99 for your first year. Sign up at McAfee.com/online protection.
This episode is presented by State Farm. Having insurance isn't the same as having State Farm. It's like needing the protection of an offensive guard on the football field, but getting an elementary school crossing guard. Sure, they're both guards, but you can only trust one to keep your quarterback safe when the game is on the line. So don't settle for just any insurance when there's State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Here's my 30-second story with Guinness. As soon as my sister and I get home for the holidays, we don't even unpack. We head straight to our pub. The bartender already knows our order, Guinness and fries. We laugh all night, catch up with old friends, and walk home with faces sore from smiling. It's one of my favorite nights of the year. That was my 30-second story with Guinness.
Guinness Draft Stout. Please enjoy responsibly. Imported by Diageo Beer Company, USA, New York, New York.
I know every operating system like the back of my hand.
I have 25 years of experience and have worked with several people from your company. I've been recognized for my passion. My team is everything.
LinkedIn delivers candidates who rise above the rest. With an up-to-date view into shared connections, skills, and interests you won't find anywhere else. See why 86% of small businesses who post a job on LinkedIn get a qualified candidate within a day. Post a job for free at linkedin.com/achieve. LinkedIn, your next great hire is here.
Hey there, Duke fans. Welcome to episode number 127 of DBR Bites. It is Sunday, December 28th, 2025. We are getting close to flipping the calendar to 2026, but before the year closes out, we have a lot to talk about. I'm Donald Wine. I'm your host for this episode. This is not going to be a Bites. We're just calling it a Bites. Jason Evans is here. Jason, hope you had a happy holiday. Everyone out there, hope you had a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, a joyous Kwanzaa for all of us celebrating. But Jason, how have you been enjoying our time off here?
I will freely admit, look, we first of all, by the way, we got a whole bunch of emails into the DBR inbox, dbrpodcast@gmail.com from folks wishing us a happy holidays, telling us, just how appreciative they are of the work that it takes for us to do this podcast. I think there may be some people out there who think that you and I just kind of roll out of bed and just come on and talk. They don't realize the amount of time that it takes, the preparation that it takes, the research and all the other stuff to put one of these together. So I'll go ahead and say it's kind of nice to have a few days where I was sort of like, I'll put Duke, as opposed to the front of my brain, to the back of my brain, not necessarily think as much about college basketball and college football as I am almost full time otherwise. So it was enjoyable to have a few days to do that. Although, as we're going to get to later on this podcast, there's been stuff happening in college basketball, just insane stuff regarding who is eligible and who is playing and where they're coming from and the such, that I was like, as much as I've turned my brain off, I'm like, my brain will not shut off on this topic, and we'll get to it a little later.
Yeah, I spent it here in DC. I usually go home for Texas. I wasn't able to make it home for Christmas, but I was able to spend it with my best friend's family out in Annapolis. My godson, all the kids had a nice Merry Christmas. It was a lot of fun, and really glad I was able to take that in. But Jason, on New Year's Eve, it is going to be a busy day, not just for Duke fans, but especially for me, because Duke football will be in the Sun Bowl. We will talk about that in just a second. Of course, we're going to talk about Duke basketball. They will be playing Georgia Tech at around the same time. We're going to talk about that in another episode that's coming out probably as you listen to this on Monday night. So stay tuned for that as well. For me also, Jason, we have the college football playoff. Miami beat Texas A&M. They draw Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl, which is in Dallas. Maybe I should have just gone to Dallas and just stuck around. But this is going to be a big day. And also, Jason, I have the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl. Why that bowl? Because it's Michigan versus Texas. So every team that I've ever cared about is playing on December 31st. I have my New Year's Eve sorted. I don't have to worry about dressing up in anything other than sports jerseys for the entire day, which is going to be terrific for me.
Are you going to go out to watch these games? Or are you just going to stay in?
To be determined. The local club here for Miami is not having a watch party because the normal venue that they use is booked for New Year's Eve. So it's going to be a little bit hard. I'm sure there's going to be somewhere to watch. I'll probably link with a couple friends and see if we can't just watch at somebody's house and then hopefully ring in the new year at that point. But Jason, that's for December 31st. Everyone, if you want to send me a gift, send me oxygen for December 31st because I'm going to need it. And for all of us out there, we're going to need oxygen. And we're also going to need at least a multi-view, multiple TV sets because, as we mentioned, the Sun Bowl will be on CBS, 2 p.m. Eastern time on December 31st. We are playing the Arizona State Sun Devils. And let's get into a preview of this game. And first of all, we're going to talk about their record. And then Jason and I will kind of talk about some of the players because obviously in this bowl season, you have to talk about who's playing and who's not. But first, Arizona State, you guys may be familiar with this matchup because the last time we were in the Sun Bowl in 2014, we faced none other than the Arizona State Sun Devils. Blue Devils versus Sun Devils. It is the second time these two teams have faced off. Both of them will be in the Sun Bowl. The last time in 2014, Arizona State won 36-31. We are hoping, obviously, that it's going to be different this time around. Duke enters this game as 3-point favorites, and some of the players playing and not playing are kind of the reason why Duke has emerged as a favorite in this game. Arizona State, 8-4 on the season. They were tied for fourth in the Big 12, and they had a couple of decent wins. Northern Arizona, Texas State, Baylor, TCU, but their biggest win of the season
is a big one,
Texas
man. You got to
Tech.
tell folks about this. This is impressive.
Well, Texas Tech is currently in the college football playoff. They are a 4 seed, so they have not even played yet. They got a bye last week. The only team to beat them was this Arizona State team. And it was a game where I feel like at the time we didn't think about how big the implications would be for that kind of win. I mean, it made it to the point where the Big 12 championship game was essentially a playing game for the college football playoff between BYU and Texas Tech. But Texas Tech, one loss on their resume, and that is to this Sun Devil team. They also have wins over Iowa State, West Virginia, and Colorado. Their losses, Mississippi State by 4, and then Utah, Houston, and Arizona in conference. All of those were by double digits. But again, these games were very close until one team pulled away at the end. Now, their head coach is Kenny Dillingham, and you may think, why are we talking about the coach for this game? I mean, obviously he's a very good coach, but there was also some stuff swirling around him. He had rumors swirling about him flirting with the Michigan job, which ultimately went to Kyle Whittingham. And I mean, there was even a point where it felt like Kenny Dillingham in the media after they had been announced for the Sun Bowl was basically saying his goodbyes to the Arizona State program, saying, hey, I'm probably about to get picked up by another school, and if I leave, I got to go. That ultimately never materialized, and he ended up staying at Arizona State, and I believe even signed a long-term extension, which is usually what happens when another program flirts with your coach, and your coach ultimately decides to stay. It's usually because you opened up your checkbook and gave him a little bit more money. But that was a little bit of a distraction for about a week and a half for Arizona State. But Jason, as we talk about the players, again, in this bowl season, and this NIL era in the transfer portal, the question is who is playing and who is not. I know you have some of those answers.
Yeah, for Arizona State, it's a challenge to preview this game because the guys who I ordinarily would talk about, the guys who we ordinarily would focus on, a lot of them are gone. Mm-hmm. A whole lot of them are gone. The opt-outs, whether it's guys who are getting ready for the NFL draft or guys who are entering the transfer portal, is just a big story nowadays when it comes to bowl games. And for Arizona State, they've got a lot. They've got a lot of guys who have opted out. Their quarterback, Sam Leavitt, now he got hurt, so that's part of why he's missing the game. But Sam Leavitt's also going to enter the portal. He's going to be one of the biggest names in the transfer portal this offseason.
Yeah, ultimately he's going to command a salary they're talking about in the $5 to $6 million range just to transfer.
Yeah, but so Sam Levitt not available in this game. Their top running back, Raleek Brown, is headed to the NFL draft. Their top wide receiver, Jordan Tyson, headed to the NFL draft. They have a linebacker, Keyshawn Elliott, who led the team in tackles, led the team in sacks. He's opting out of this game. Both their starting cornerbacks have opted out. One of them is going to the draft. The other one's going to the portal. Their starting safety is out with an injury. The Arizona State team that we're going to face is just very, very different from the Arizona State team that played most of their games during the season. Now, that's not to say that they're missing everybody. Virtually their entire defensive line is going to be playing in this game, and they've got a good defense. That's going to be, one of their real strengths. Let me get to the guys who are expected to play. And we'll begin with the quarterback because that's where you always begin. Their quarterback's going to be Jeff Sims. Now, if you're a Duke football fan, you're going to be like, wait a second, that name rings a bell. Jeff Sims was starting quarterback at Georgia Tech for 3 seasons, 2020, 2021, and 2020, 2021, and 2022. Yes, if you do your math correct, he is in his 6th season of college football. Jeff Sims is one of these guys who has bounced around as a starter. He's gotten hurt. He's redshirted. He's done all those kind of different things. And he took over with 4 games left the season after Sam Levitt got hurt. He is absolutely a dual threat quarterback. Probably you would expect him to rush at least 10 times in this game. He's we talked about Jeff Sims went to Georgia Tech. At Georgia Tech, he was very much a dual threat, a running quarterback, primarily more than a passing quarterback. They had a game against Iowa State this year where Jeff Sims rushed for 228 yards. He will. Jeff Sims is not going to throw for 250 yards. He might rush for 250 yards, though. One reason that Sims rushes as much as he does is that, honestly, he's not a great passer. Throughout his Arizona State career, he's been there for 2 years now. He's only completed 52% of his passes this season. Again, we mentioned he took over as a starter with 4 games left in the year when Levitt got hurt. He's only averaging 5.9 yards per pass as Jeff Sims. That's a really low number. That tells you that this is a guy who, A, is not completing a lot of passes, and B, is mostly throwing short routes, check downs, that kind of stuff. By comparison, I said 5.9 yards per pass for Jeff Sims. Darian Mensah averages 8.1 yards per pass. So there's just a huge difference in the type of quarterback the two quarterbacks are going to be. And by the way, on Jeff Sims, even though he doesn't throw it a ton, even though he only played 4 games as a starter, he had 5 interceptions this season. So he will turn it over for you. The Duke defense needs to be opportunistic when it comes to that. And then the other thing I wanted to mention about quarterback, they have a freshman, a true freshman named Cameron Dyer. He's a great athlete. This is a guy who, like when he came to college, people were like, he could play quarterback. He could also play wide receiver. He could be a cornerback, great athlete. He has not played at all this year. He's been recovering from an ACL, but about a month ago or so, he started to participate in some practices. And it really looks like they've already said that they're going to give him some opportunities to play quarterback in this game. Now, he's going to be very different than Jeff Sims. This is a guy who has a big arm. He's going to be willing to go downfield. And it's just, as the Duke defense prepares for this contest, they are preparing for 2 quarterbacks. I think you'll primarily see Jeff Sims. That's probably who's going to get, almost certainly Sims is going to get the start. But Cam Dyer is a very intriguing matchup for them, so to speak. And you may see them put in some sort of limited play options. He won't have the whole playbook available to him. But be on the lookout when this guy comes in. He could do some special things for them.
And the interesting thing about this duality that they have at quarterback is they're the 2 types of quarterbacks that we had the most difficulty against in the regular season. The guy who can run, like a Haynes King type of guy, and then you have the guy who just does nothing but throw the ball deep, it was a JCL out in Cal, who would just do nothing but throw the ball 50 yards downfield, right?
Exactly.
Big plays. And also allowing the quarterback to scramble and get tons of yardage and, again, eat up clock, also keeping the defense on the field. So, yeah, it's interesting that they have to prepare for both extremes at quarterback. I'm sure they're going to see more of King, right? The ground
of Jeff
game.
Sims, yeah.
Jeff Sims. I'm sorry. They're going to see more of him, but just again, when they see those packages come in, you're going to see the quarterbacks when they shift out. It's not like they're going to maybe come him in for a whole series, right? They may just bring him in for one play with a jumbo package. You might see the other guy come in with 5 wideouts, and you go, okay, you have to prepare for both of them. Those extremes make it a little bit more difficult.
Exactly. A couple other things I wanted to mention, and then I'll be all done with the players. And again, we're kind of taking shots in the dark here in terms of who the key players are going to be because of all the opt-outs for Arizona State. But I mentioned that Raleek Brown, their running back, who rushed over 1,100 yards in the season, he's heading for the NFL. Both their second and their third string running backs are also out in this game. They had basically Arizona State had 5 different guys rush for more than 100 yards on the season. 2 of them are quarterbacks, Sam Levitt and Jeff Sims. But the 3 running backs who got almost all their carries this year, all 3 of them are out in this game for various reasons. So they're on to their 4th string running back, who is a true freshman named Demarius Robinson. Man. His nickname is Man. I found out. Demarius Man Robinson. Nope. I love that.
Nope. I don't care. He's not Man. There's only one Man.
Only one Man. Well, this Man is very different from Duke's Man because he is 5'9", not quite 7'1". Arizona State's Man Robinson, 5'9", 190 pounds, very quick. He's a good pass catcher out of the backfield. So if Sims is looking for checkdowns, he could be very useful. But I just wanted folks to know, who's going to be the guy rushing the ball the most. It's going to be their 4th string running back. Meanwhile, Duke's Nate Shepard only needs 38 yards to reach 1,000 yards rushing on the season, and I expect Duke to lean on Nate Shepard. I want to see Nate get over 1,000 yards. That'd be awesome as a freshman.
So you started to mention some of the Duke players. I think it's important to note who we will see on the Duke side, and I think you got to lead with the fact that at quarterback, Darian Mensah is coming back for 2026. I know we've talked about it on this show. That's obviously a huge development for Duke. Also, his partner, Cooper Barkate, announced he was coming back in 2026. I think that, again, the leading one of the leading passers in all of the nation and the leading receiver on the team, both deciding to come back. You mentioned Nate Shepard. You have your 3 best skill guys coming back.
Jeremiah Hazley, the tight end. Our top wide receiver, our top running back, our quarterback, and our top tight end are all coming back. And by the way, as the season moved on more and more, Barkate and Hazley were like the 2 favorite targets of Darian Mensah. Mm-hmm. So yeah, Mensah
one to go deep and one for possession. Yeah. So there's also the fact that we do have some guys that have been missing practice, and it's because they're entering the draft. I think we've talked about Chandler Rivers and Brian Parker both deciding to go to the draft.
Vincent Anthony Jr. also is up to
VJ Anthony is going to the draft. And then in the portal, we've lost 4 players, but 3 of them were redshirting. The biggest loss, obviously, is Peyton Jones, who started out amongst that wide receiver or that running back group, but eventually lost his spot to Nate Shepard and Anderson Castle. Now, there is one, Jason, that I think is important. Wesley Williams, who was one of the rocks on the defensive line, declared for the NFL draft, but is going to play in the Sun Bowl. So that is a huge development for the fact that as of now, December 28th, that we have him on the line. I think that's going to be really important for our defense. And again, in these bowl games, we've seen players opt out the night before, or just like the team knows, but they don't officially announce it until just before the game. So your mileage is going to be varied with everything we just talked about with regards to the players. So I think in the short term, the fact that we have our skill players on offense back, one of our rocks on the defensive line back, I think that is going to be huge for this team as they seek to finish out the year on this winning streak that we happen to be on right now.
Yeah, and you mentioned that Duke is a 3-point favorite in this game. If Arizona State had everybody and Duke had everybody, then I think Arizona State would be a favorite. Not a couple points.
Not a huge favorite, but sure, yeah.
Right.
Couple points.
But I think they would be a favorite. Like the analytics, the computers that don't know who's playing and who's not playing say that Arizona State should be a mild favorite in this game. I think the fact that Duke is a 3-point pick is a nod to all these opt-outs, but it says something about the Duke program. It says something about Manny Diaz. It says something about the optimism that people have about Duke and Duke's future that so many of the Duke guys are coming back, that they haven't opted out, that they haven't entered the portal, that they aren't already going for the draft, or even if they're going for the draft, they're like, no, but I'm staying with Duke and I'm staying with my brothers and I'm going to play in this game. It speaks to the culture. And you cannot discount how important that is. All the praise needs to go to Manny Diaz and his coaching staff for creating the atmosphere where these guys want to be a part of this, and for just building on the success that they had all year long to win an ACC title. Unbelievable kind of thing. And now be playing in a bowl game and have so many of the guys who won that title saying, I am staying around. We're going for bigger and better things next year. And it begins with us playing a big game in a bowl game on New Year's, on New Year's Eve. Again, I just can't state enough of what it says about the program that Manny Diaz has built at Duke.
I mean, look, the recruiting tool of, hey, let's come back and defend this thing, that thing being the ACC championship, is a big deal. And the fact that, again, they were able to push through, I don't care how we got to the game, we got that opportunity, we took advantage of it, and we won the game. We're the rightful champions. And for us to have so many guys coming back to defend that, I think is great. But as you mentioned, it starts New Year's Eve, 2 p.m. Eastern time, on big CBS. So you ain't got to look for it on cable. It's going to be on network. Hopefully it's a good game, and hopefully Duke can take out a very, very strong Big 12 opponent. We're going to pause right here. On the other side, we're going to talk about college recruiting and how some guys are reaching to new heights. And by those heights, I mean the NBA, to get some guys to come back to college.
Oh, Hilton, stay. Your beds are soft and cozy. No lumpy couch, no stiff futon, no shower line at crack of dawn. Oh, Hilton, stay. A holiday you're saving.
When you want holiday comfort you can count on, it matters where you stay. This season, enjoy spacious, comfortable rooms and friendly service when you book with Hilton instead. Hilton for the stay.
The Subaru Share the Love event is on from November 20th to January 2nd. During this event, Subaru donates to charities like the ASPCA, helping support more than 142,000 animals so far. When you purchase or lease a new vehicle during the 2025 Subaru Share the Love event, Subaru and its retailers will make a minimum $300 donation to charity. Visit Subaru.com/share to learn more.
This is Jason Momoa, and I'll be your finance professor today. Welcome to Banking Smarter 101 with Chime. Bam! First lesson, sign up for Chime and set up direct deposit. You'll be joining millions of members banking fee-free. Second lesson, get cash back on eligible purchases while building credit and a higher APY on your savings. That's how you bank smarter this season. Fa-la-la-la-la, class dismissed. Join Chime today.
Chime is a financial technology company, not a bank. Banking services and a secure Chime Visa credit card provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A. Members FDIC. Optional services and products may have fees or charges. Details at chime.com/feesinfo. With a qualifying direct deposit, earn 1.5% cash back on eligible secure Chime Visa credit card purchases. On-time payment history may have a positive impact on your credit score. Results may vary. APY means annual percentage yield. Learn about credit building and more at chime.com.
I am so excited for this spa day. Candles lit, music on, hot tub warm and ready. And then my chronic hives come back. Again, in the middle of my spa day. What a wet blanket. Looks like another spell of itchy red skin. If you have chronic spontaneous urticaria or CSU, there is a different treatment option. Hives during my next spa day? Not if I can help it. Learn more at treatmyhives.com.
Okay, we are back, and we are shifting our attention to the college basketball court, or should I say the G League court, or should I say the NBA court. Actually, we're going to talk about all these courts because all of them have been meshed into one little pot that is the new era of college recruiting. And we're talking a little bit about the fact that over the course of the last couple of days, we've seen reports about players who are committing to colleges to play immediately. In the case of James Nagy, who committed to Baylor a few days ago and is going to play immediately for the Baylor Bears with 4 years of eligibility, you're thinking that's great. Guys are figuring out a way to get into college early or whatever. No, this guy was in college. I'm sorry, he wasn't in college. He was at FC Barcelona for a long time, but he has been drafted by the NBA, by my Pistons in 2023. Trenton Flowers, another guy. He's currently on a two-way deal with the Chicago Bulls. Ladies and gentlemen, he has scored NBA points in the last 3 weeks. He is now talking about committing to the likes of Kentucky, Kansas, BYU, Florida, Michigan, Clemson, or SMU. Jason, we're here to make sense of all this. I don't know if we can, but we're at least going to try over the next 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, so let me talk about those two players because they're two very different circumstances and two really interesting situations for college basketball. As you said, James Nagy, who's a 7-foot center, was drafted in the 2023 NBA draft. He was the 31st pick that year. He's played NBA Summer League, but he's never even been a two-way player. He's mostly, as you mentioned, he's mostly been an international player. And he has already committed to Baylor. The NCAA has already said, yep, he's eligible. In fact, they've said he has 4 years of eligibility. Don't ask me to explain how a guy drafted in 2023 could have 4 years of eligibility starting in 2026. But hey, okay, this is what the NCAA has said. And James Nagy, it should be noted, will be eligible and will be playing for Baylor right away at the start of the next semester, which is, obviously just a few days away. And it's worth noting that Baylor is a team that they've got great guards in that team. They don't have a lot of guys up front. Like, they need some help on the front line. And so James Nagy could be a difference maker for them. I want to be clear. He's not someone, I don't expect this guy to be a walking double-double. I don't expect him to walk in and be a starter from day one. If you look at his stats overseas, if you look at what he's done in his professional career so far, you're not looking at a guy who's going to be like a 15-point per game scorer or something like that. You're looking at a guy who's going to grab some rebounds. He's going to protect the rim a bit for you. He's a space eater. He is 7 feet tall and he's big. So he's going to have an impact for them in their rotation. But I'm not even sure he's going to be a starter for them. But again, the significant thing here, I think, Donald, is someone who has already gone through the NBA draft process. That would be unprecedented for college basketball, in my opinion. Additionally, we're talking about someone who at least has earned some NBA money playing summer league ball. So again, that is unprecedented for college basketball. And then we add in the third thing on James Nagy, that he's entering at midseason. This idea, this notion, and there are other guys. There's a guy for BYU. I think there's a guy for Utah. There are one or two other guys who are joining teams at midseason. Literally haven't been enrolled, haven't been playing basketball, college basketball elsewhere. They're just showing up out of international leagues or the G League and the such, and they're starting at mid-season. And I think for a lot of us, that feels wrong. Rosters were I don't want to say rosters were set, but we had an idea of who's on each team. And now here's a team picking up some help in January. It just feels weird.
Now, I think also what's important to note is we've talked initially about this. If you remember a couple of months ago, we talked about Thierry Darlin and London Johnson. Thierry Darlin going to Santa Clara, London Johnson. Both of them had played for G League Ignite, some G League teams. And then they committed. London Johnson's going to enroll this winter at Louisville. But back then it was stated that he was going to wait until next year to start his 4 years eligibility. And at the time, the NCAA had ruled that these type of players who go to the G League and had not gone through the NBA draft process and were within 5 years removed from their high school class were eligible to play with full eligibility. They just had to pay back what was above what they considered payment for basic living expenses, which is what they kind of have ruled that for all of Europe, that those guys like James Nagy, who are playing in Europe, they're making what is called basic living expenses when they're in the college or high school years, because there's no traditional high school basketball system set up in Europe the way it is here. They usually play pro. And so they kind of say, okay, if you're making between 40 and 60 grand a year, that's just basic living expenses and you don't have to worry about that. But if you make above that, you have to pay back that difference to become eligible. So that was the case of London Johnson. Now, once you get to the next guy, I think we're going to talk about, which is Trenton Flowers, this is a lot different because Trenton Flowers is currently on a two-way deal with the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say Trenton Flowers is a very different case. Trenton Flowers has not committed any place. He's just talking to schools. We've got a list of schools he's talking to, and he's not talking about joining a school right now. He is talking about, something that would happen next fall. So he'd sort of be part of the class of 2026 to some extent. And as you mentioned, he's a two-way player. Last year he had a two-way contract with the NBA, with the LA Clippers. This year he has it with the Chicago Bulls. He's appeared in multiple NBA games over his career. He has gotten an NBA paycheck. He is earning $500,000 or so this year on his two-way deal with the Chicago Bulls. And by the way, Trenton Flowers, that name should ring a bell. If you're someone who follows recruiting, he was a big-time recruit. He was a five-star recruit who committed to Louisville in 2023, but opted out and wanted to turn pro right away. He went and played in the Australian NBL. Remember that was a thing for a little while?
Yep.
Guys would go play in the NBL. Trenton Flowers is a 6'9" guard. I mean, and by the way, averaged 20 points per game last year in the G League. Like, unlike James Nagy, who I'm like, and a lot of these guys who I've seen who are coming into different programs, you sort of look at their stats and look what you're like, that guy's not really much of an NBA prospect. He's someone who can maybe, he'll be a rotation piece, but not like a star. Trenton Flowers, if he ends up being eligible and going to college, Trenton Flowers is going to be a double-digit scorer in college basketball. There's no question about it. He will be, a kind of guy who you're like, oh, he could contend for all conference in a power conference kind of team. So this is a very, very different argument. But I want to get into why this is all happening.
Before you do that.
Okay, go ahead.
Before you do that, because I think in the case of Trenton Flowers, it opens up some doors that I think we're going to discuss. And those doors being, how far do we go? Because even within Trenton Flowers, and I just mentioned the list of big-time programs who are interested in talking with him about potentially coming back to college, there are some college coaches who are against this. But at the end of the day, there are some college coaches that have started figuring out the possibility of bringing back players that went to college, played a couple years in college, maybe 1 or 2 years in college, and then went to the NBA. So long as they're within that 5-year window, they're saying, okay, maybe with this ruling by the NCAA, we can go get some of those guys and bring them back. If you're like, hey, you got drafted, you don't like where you're drafted, you're not playing that much, just come on back to college. You're making, $600,000 a year. We can easily make that in NIL money. We could give you $1 million in NIL money. Why don't you just come back to college and finish out your eligibility here with us, as opposed to riding the pine in the NBA? So this is the slippery slope that we're starting to get to. And as we're about to discuss, the NCAA is about to basically throw up their hands and say, I don't know, what do you want us to do?
Yeah. Look, let me discuss the legality of this, and then I'm going to mention the name of DJ Stewart, and we're going to talk about DJ Stewart for a second. But let me first discuss sort of the legal thing that's happening here with the NCAA. And the NCAA, it is clear, wants to avoid an antitrust lawsuit. The moment you block a guy, the moment you say, oh, you can't play, that person can threaten you with an say, you're restricting my trade. You are a monopoly that is in control of this arena, and you're not open to competition. And so I'm going to sue you, make an antitrust lawsuit against you. And the NCAA, I think, has decided, hey, you know what would be a really good defense against an antitrust lawsuit? We should just let everybody play.
Let everybody play. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the NCAA is functionally saying that they are one of many different leagues. Like, guys can play in the G League. They can play international. They can play in the NBA, or they can play in the NCAA. That the NCAA is saying, we're not the only league out there for these people. So there's no antitrust stuff going on with us. And it's a really interesting, like a year ago or so, there probably was a good antitrust argument against the NCAA. And frankly, it doesn't exist anymore, because they are now saying, hey, if you, like you say, if you're within this window of eligibility, this 5 years from your high school class, although some guys get longer than that because they get red shirts and injuries and things like that. If you're within this window, then you're eligible and you can play in our league. And there's no way you can tell me that there isn't going to be a guy who's made NBA money who won't be allowed into the NCAA. Is there any logic, Donald, in saying that a guy who made money playing in the Spanish Pro League or the G League or the Australian League, those guys are eligible, but if you earned a penny from an NBA team, you're not? There's no logic in this at all.
And I think that's where the basic living expenses came in. They kind of used that as the initial ruling of, hey, it doesn't matter where you're coming, especially now that you're making money in college. Like, hey, it doesn't matter where you came from. As long as you made this threshold, you're good. If you made above this threshold, just pay back the difference and you're still able to play. But even that, again, is pushing a slippery slope to a point where, a lot of people don't want to go, right? And it's going to create some issues between the coaches that want to do this and the coaches that don't. Because, Jason, on the other side, if you think about college football, we have guys like Diego Pavia who are like, nah, I'm not trying to leave school. I'm making more money here than I'll make in the NFL. So they're petitioning the NCAA to stay additional years beyond the expiration of that window. Whether it's their eligibility, whether it's the JUCO rule that came into effect. Now, like Diego Pavia is in his 6th or 7th year of college. He was the runner-up for the Heisman. And he's like, it's kind of like longevity, right? If you reward a guy like, hey, this guy's been with our team for so long, like, let's pay him, as the fan favorite and the club face that he is. We see that all the time in pro sports. Now, like Diego Pavia is basically saying, if I stay at Vanderbilt, I'm going to make way more money at Vanderbilt because I'm more of a marketing commodity to them than I will be sitting on the bench and hoping to make the 53-man roster of any NFL team. So why can't I just stay here? You're actually denying me the opportunity to make more money by not allowing me to stay. And so you have that range over here. And now this NBA thing is going to be a problem because once that happens, Jason, I promise you, it's going to happen in college football too. And I don't think you want it in college football. Guys playing in the NFL and saying, hey, I kind of want to finish up my degree because this isn't really working out. And after 2 years, they come back and you have grown men who have been playing in the NFL beating up on kids in college.
Yeah, it's going to be a mess. And I don't know that there's anyone who's going to solve the mess. Think about a guy like Johni Broome, who last year was the second best player in college basketball. If Johni Broome had another year of eligibility, if he could play this year, he would be a $5 million college ball player. There's no question about that. Some program would find the money to pay Johni Broome $4 or $5, maybe even $6 million. Instead, he's in the NBA where he's barely on the Philadelphia 76ers roster. He's making $1.2 million. Johni Broome has been, because of NCAA eligibility rules, has been denied, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 million this year. If I was him, I'd be furious. And Donald, let's get back to what we were talking about a moment ago. DJ Stewart, who played for Duke a few years ago and would still have NCAA eligibility this season right now. DJ Stewart is a guy who's, he signed, I think, a couple 2A contracts. He's never made it all the way. DJ Stewart's probably never made more than about $250,000, $300,000 in a professional basketball season. If DJ Stewart right now, and DJ Stewart, by the way, has done really well at the G League level. Like, he's been a upper teens, 40% 3-point shooter, really good G League player who's always knocking on the door of the NBA, not quite there. If DJ Stewart wants to come back to college basketball for a year, he's going to make $3+ million. I guarantee you. So the NCAA is restricting this guy from life-changing money. And there are lots of other guys like him who where their eligibility clock hasn't expired and they could make way more money in college than they are in the pro leagues. Or even guys like Johni Broome, where the eligibility clock, or Diego Pavia, the eligibility clock has expired. And frankly, if I was one of those guys, I'd be like, I'm going to take a shot. It's worth millions of dollars to me to take a shot. And if I bust the NCAA on this legal argument, then I make my money. It's going to happen. And for the NCAA, they've just got to figure out some way of defining what they will and will not allow and then enforcing that. And at the moment, I think the NCAA is sort of throwing up its hands and just saying, yeah, whatever, because we don't want to lose a lawsuit. But it's really, it's created just crazy uncertainty. And it's significant for Duke, by the way, Donald, because we are a program who primarily relies on high school prospects who want to grow into being NBA prospects. That's virtually the entire Duke roster. There isn't a single guy in our 9-man rotation who doesn't think he's going to earn an NBA paycheck someday in the future. Even Darren Harris, who functionally is probably the 9th man. And that just puts us in a different boat than these schools that are going to be grabbing guys who probably already know they don't have much of an NBA future, but they can be impactful players in college playing against younger guys. Duke's roster is going to be super young every year because that's the type of player we're getting. And I don't think you're going to see Duke being one of the schools that reaches out to these kind of, guys who functionally haven't even been in high school in several years and who have very little academic interests. I don't know. You go for a second, then we can wrap this up.
Yeah, I think the other thing is, again, when I talk about the slippery slope, and there's some people who, we did that survey, right? There's some people who think that, no college player should be paid more than a scholarship. We are beyond that. And you and I have always said that, hey, these players deserve to be paid. And I'm fine with that. But I think the slippery slope begins with, as I mentioned, the Diego Pavia situation allows people to think beyond the G League and to think beyond a two-way player. Because if you have eligibility, Diego Pavia has 0 eligibility left. And he's basically trying to add more on because it's more lucrative for him to do so. Now, you mentioned DJ Stewart, who was outside of that window because technically he's in the 2020 class and he's 5 years removed from his high school. So he's technically outside that window.
Well, he could play right away. He could play right now. He'd still be in the window.
No, he can't because he graduated in 2020 from high school, and the 2025 class would be. So you're talking about 2021 year, who would be eligible to play in 2026, right? Because that would be 5 years removed.
You're right. Class. I may have the math wrong. You may be right. Yeah.
Yeah. But the issue is still like if Diego Pavia has 0 eligibility and can, basically sue his way onto a team or at least file a grievance to get onto it to continue playing, then a DJ Stewart should be able to come back. A Harry Giles, who's playing in China, should be able to come back and finish out his eligibility. After that, what's to stop LeBron James from, after he retires, to say, I'm just going to go to Arizona and play a year with Bryce so that I can say I played with both of my kids before I retired? What's, a guy who has no eligibility, who's been in the league for a long time, like, again, if the NCAA wants to see themselves as a alternative league, right, an alternative kind of pro league, then that's going to allow some of these NBA players who don't make rosters, who are clearly good enough, but just don't make the roster, maybe right team, right opportunity, to then find a college team. And what that does is it makes it where we're going to start running out of spots on these college teams. It's the same reason that people sue to get into the NBA younger, because they're like, hey, we're trying to get to the NBA sooner, and the NBA is saying we just don't have enough room for you. We have 15-man rosters now, 18 with you have the 3-way players or 2-way players. Like, we don't have enough room for all these players who want to play in the NBA. It's tough. But now college is going to run into that same issue in college football, in college basketball, women's basketball, right? The amount of players who get cut as first-round picks in the WNBA draft is staggering. If you pay attention to that league, every year you see sometimes 9 players who get drafted in the first 2 rounds of that draft who don't make a roster because those rosters are already full. So they could come back to college. You have those type of athletes who could go, again, it makes it where people now have to recruit down, left and right, and now up. And I think that is what's going to create chaos. And so it's interesting to see how the NCAA is just kind of throwing up their hands at this. But I don't know what the correct answer is other than all of these adults getting in a room and figuring out what the best scenario is for everyone so that everyone can be in this situation. And I think we've talked about, everyone being eligible at 18 or once they graduate from high school. And then if you're drafted, like we could have instances where players get drafted and stashed like they do in Europe. Like James Najee is a draft and stash situation where team drafted him, said, we're not ready for you yet. Stay in Europe in season. He just never came over. We could have guys who are doing the same thing, but in college. And we see that in baseball. We see that in hockey sometimes, but we don't see it in college basketball or college football, but that's where we're headed.
So I said DJ Stewart. I guess the guy we should focus on is Trevor Keels then.
Trevor Keels. Yep. That was my. Also, Jason, if you mentioned AJ Griffin was in that class. Now, I know he recently retired to enter the ministry, but again, like, I know ministers who enter the ministry and they go, hey, this is great, but I can continue this word while also going back to what I do best, which is, playing a sport or the case of, Mace the rapper, like he quit and started a church and then he came back to rapping, right? Like there's that opportunity. And again, who knows if Duke were to call up AJ Griffin, if he was eligible again, to be like, hey, AJ, here's $5 million. This is, more than what you were making it for the Hawks. Like you want to fancy coming back for a year? Like because that would be he would be a fan favorite to us. He may not be worth that to Vanderbilt, but he may be worth that to us. Just like Diego Pavia may not be worth $6 million to anybody but Vanderbilt, right? Those are the things that people have to grapple with. And that's why this is probably going to come down to a judge, maybe even the Supreme Court, if it gets that far, but that's a long time away, saying, okay, what is the value of a college player? What is the value of an NBA player? And how do the differences, how the nuances of some of these values work as to making a system that makes sense?
Well, I was going to say my last word on this was going to be that we're going to find out whether this, 4 or 5 year eligibility thing is going to stand up, because that's the only thing keeping college basketball from functionally just becoming the NBA minor league with guys of any age playing. Zakai Ziegler of Tennessee, one of the best players on that Tennessee ball club last year, one of the best players in college basketball last year, easily one of the top 2 or 3 point guards in all of college basketball a year ago. Zakai Ziegler's filed a lawsuit. Now he initially said he wanted an injunction to make him eligible for a 5th year of college basketball, and the NCAA said no. The court said no. But his lawsuit is still going forward. And there have been briefs filed and all this other kind of stuff. And the NCAA is saying, oh, it's all moot. By the time this is resolved, his 5 years will be up. And Zakai Ziegler's like, only because you're denying me from playing. And Zakai Ziegler is saying that, I should be making $4+ million this year. And the NCAA has denied me that extra year of eligibility. And, I don't know. It's possible the NCAA is being as open as they are to all these other leagues right now because the Zakai Ziegler lawsuit is still in the courts and it's still moving ahead. And at some point it's going to get in front of a jury, and the NCAA is going to have to make arguments in front of a jury about why they did not allow this guy to continue to play. It's, all this stuff is just changing the game in radical kind of ways. And you have some schools that are embracing it and some schools that are like, I don't know, I'm resistant. I mean, look, we saw Tom Izzo. Tom Izzo has become sort of the voice of reason, so to speak, in the college basketball world. He blasted Baylor for taking Najee, the guy that we were talking about a little while ago, the big man. Tom Izzo said to the media, he's like, I need to get on the phone with Scott Drew, the Baylor head coach. I need to talk to Scott Drew and figure out what's going on. That's that's kind of like having.
I'm sure Scott is waiting by the phone.
I got you. Scott does not want to have that. He does not want to have that conversation with Tom Izzo, the elder statesman of the coaching profession. And Tom Izzo went ahead and said, "Shame on the NCAA and shame on the coaches." But you know what, Tom? It's about winning for all these coaches. You may say it's shame that they're out there pursuing guys who've earned NBA paychecks, who've been in the NBA draft, guys who've been playing professional basketball for several years now. You may say shame, but someone's going to take him, and someone's going to use him, and someone's going to win basketball games with him.
Now,
and
I will say in that rant that Tom Izzo had. This might be the Michigan State hater in me, but I did feel like he was acting a little bit more like a HOA president. That's like, oh, your lawn's out of compliance, like that sort of thing. Like I'm gonna go straight to to Scott and tell him that that he shouldn't be doing this. No, your call should be to the NCAA. Your call should be to your congressman or congresswoman, right? Your call should be to those people who can make the difference, and not the coach whose job is just like yours, like you mentioned, to try and win. And if this is a rule, if this is something that he's able to do, like some of these coaches are going to say, hey, for me to win so that I can get my money as well and I can keep my job, I need to go to these lengths to do it. I can't compete with, some of these schools in this way with the traditional recruiting. So we got to think outside the box. And this is as far outside the box as some guys can go. So his call should not be to Scott Drew, maybe to get explanation of what it's going to be or how he was able to pull that off, so that he can use it in the future. But really, it should be to the NCAA and say, hey, adults, get into a room and figure all this out and then tell us what it's going to be and stand on it. Stand 10 toes on it so that if you're going to file a lawsuit, whatever, at least we know where you stand instead of just throwing up your hands and saying, not my problem, because it is their problem. It's not our problem. We'll leave it for another day. We're going to end it on this episode of DBR Bites. Again, we'll be back very, very soon to preview the Georgia Tech basketball game. Again, December 31st at 4 p.m. But until then, he's Jason. I'm Donald. This has been DBR Bites episode 127. And it is now time for the Duke Band to play us out and take us home.
The high-octane phenomenon, Sisu Road to Revenge, comes home with a bang. It's an insane ride and an adrenaline-filled action epic. Critics are raving with an explosive 96% score and certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, saying it's the action spectacular of the year, with some of the craziest fight set pieces ever put to screen. Don't miss the ultimate adventure. Get it now on Prime Video, Apple TV, or Fandango at home. Rated R.